Welcome to the Property Couch, where each week you get to listen to two of Australia's leading property experts. Bryce Holdaway, co-host of Location Australia on Foxtel's Lifestyle channel, and Ben Kingsley, chair of Property Investors Council of Australia and the 2014 and 2015 Property Investment Advisors of the Year.
All right, folks, you're on the Property Couch where each week Ben and I bring you the insider's guide to property finance and money management.
Very loud, mate. People have to turn their volume down. Now get to normal volume, turn it back up.
How come you're not singing your song?
There's a reason for that. You know the reason.
Mate, I've been waiting for this, right? And actually, I was at your place on Saturday.
You were?
I didn't enjoy it as much as I thought I would. It was actually hard to watch you go through that torment because I don't want to remind anyone, but I did go on our podcast last week and national television on Saturday morning and predicted that Collingwood would win, would lead the whole game, and West Coast would win after the siren. So I was a minute 45 off that prediction.
You were 105 seconds off.
Yeah, it was 145. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, well done. Okay, got me. So how you feeling, mate?
Oh, you know,
it's almost a week later now.
Yeah, well, the reality is you just feel for Nathan Buckley. Like he's dedicated a quarter of a century to one thing and
can't get it.
Hasn't got the chocolates yet. So, I mean, yeah, you know, I have nothing to do with it, right? I'm a spectator and I enjoy it, and they give me great joy most weekends, but and they still gave me a lot of joy during the day. Right, that's the truth. So no,
it was a very good game. Hey, I filmed your reaction to losing, and a couple of people on my socials saw it, Ben.
Yeah.
And one bloke reached out and he said, "I wouldn't have done that to a mate." So just so you know, I got Ben's permission first. He said it's going to disappear in 24 hours, and I said, "Yep." I said, "All right, guys, go ahead."
Up the slight swear word in there, and
it was very rare to hear you swear. But,
unbelievable.
I don't think we labour that point too much. As much as I'd like to.
Congratulations to West Coast,
to Western Australia.
Western Australia.
I was barracking for Western Australia. We've got the webinar, Ben.
We do
next week.
Yes,
next Wednesday.
Next Wednesday night.
So 8:00 Australian Eastern Daylight Time. So we that's the thing about this webinar, Ben, is we've gone around the country and shown how to build live at the home buyer shows, and it's always enormously popular.
Yes.
So what we've done is we're going to put that into this webinar, Ben. Yep. So we're going to build the portfolio live. You're going to see it actually happen.
And we can take a little bit more of a deeper dive into some components of it too, which is good.
Which is really exciting.
New content. Yeah.
So check that out, folks. The link's in the show notes. And, mate, the book came out this week.
The book is out.
How good is that?
So if you can't find it on the shelves, don't worry. Come straight to the website /book.
And we'll
thepropertycouch.com.au /book.
Yep.
And you can grab a copy there. And we're going to give our listening community exactly the same as what we did with the Armchair Guide to Property Investing. 20% off. 20% off. Make money simple again. And all you need is the same code with the other book, which is TPC20 when you're going to buy it, and you'll get that 20% off.
20%.
20% off the retail price of the book.
Yep.
For our valued listeners.
So you should check that out. But Ben,
and next week we're going to take a bit of a dive into some money research.
We're going to help our listener, our audience,
get
their money management in order.
Correct.
In the lead up to Christmas.
Correct.
So they don't have a January hangover.
And I promised, didn't I, Bryce, last week that I will be announcing...
You're coming with gifts?
Something else. Now, if you actually go back to some of the podcasts we were talking about at the start of the year, I also alluded to this new thing that we'd been working on. So it was in combination with the book, but effectively we have now built a Money Smarts platform, Bryce.
Property Couch Money Smarts.
Property Couch's Money Smarts platform, completely free to use.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and we've done a lot of homework around privacy and security, so much so that when you log in, all we want from you is an alias. It can be a nickname, it can just be your first, whatever, just something really simple. We don't want surnames.
Pies for
premiers. We don't want mobile phone numbers. Even though it's got two-factor authentication security on it, we're actually making it really easy that your information, your financial information, is private and yours. But even if there was a challenge of something happening, no one still knows who you are. So that's the best bit. So you've got anonymity. We have no interest in that data other than the crusade that we're on in terms of helping you manage your money better. So please use it. You know, if you actually
cookbook, Ben, the book is the recipe.
Correct.
And the platform is showing you how to use it so that you can take it out for a
so
spin.
much easy to do, and you know, you can take it with you. It's mobile friendly, so it will fit onto a smartphone. It's not as prevalent on a smartphone. At the end of the day, it still costs us many thousands and thousands of dollars to build, but that's our gift.
Mm-hmm.
Our gift is to try and make sure people manage their money better. And what better way of doing it? It's not through a bank. There's not through any third parties. There's no commercialisation. It's just a nice, simple way to use a platform to allow you to do it all free to use.
Good way to start the second quarter of the financial year, Ben, so that people can get their money in order in the lead up to Christmas. So as I said before, they don't have a January hangover with not knowing where their money was. They overspent, all that sort of good stuff. So, Ben,
so check it out. propertycouch.com.au
financial peace.
Financial peace.
So,
and that will take you to the links to set yourself up. It's got Google Authenticator, so you're going to need to use the Google Authenticator app to get in. So again, that's all about heightened security. But with the Google Authenticator, we don't need your phone number. Okay, the only thing we're going to have is an alias, a nickname, and also an email address. So in the event that you do forget your passwords, we can actually help you reinstate or reset your passwords. That's it. It's as simple as that.
Check it out, folks. thepropertycouch.com.au/financial peace. Go and plug your numbers in and apply the principles that we've got in the book.
And I will do it. We've got some demo videos. We'll do a few things and probably even do a little webinar around that later on in the year as well.
All right.
Terrific.
Sounds terrific. Hey, my Mindset Minute theme today, Ben, is from the GOAT, the greatest of all time. Who am I talking about?
Michael Jordan.
Michael Jordan.
The
Very
GOAT.
good. Well, just in case you said LeBron, like everyone seems to think.
No, yeah.
The minute you get away from fundamentals, whether it's proper technique, work ethic, or mental preparation, the bottom can fall out of your game. Your schoolwork, your job, whatever you're doing. And I thought that would be interesting on the back of some media alarmists that have been around of late.
Yep.
The minute you get away from fundamentals, which we've been talking about for 192 episodes now, Ben, something's going to suffer. And so this is the point where make sure that you have bought the right property, you've correctly financed it, you've held it for the long term, and you've bought when your cash flow allows. They are the fundamentals. So just applying Michael Jordan's quote to that, Ben. But I've also got one here for you.
Oh, please.
It's another Michael Jordan one.
Okay, hit me.
I've never lost a game. I just ran out of time.
Ooh.
So that was for Collingwood last week.
Never lost a game. Yeah, well.
You just ran out of time.
We wanted less time. We wanted
you wanted 2 minutes earlier?
We wanted 2 minutes earlier, a couple of free kicks earlier, and we would have been happier.
So,
Bryce, before we get into the Pippa survey, I just wanted to also do one final shout out about the job opportunity we've got for a mortgage broker in our Sydney office. So if you're an investment savvy mortgage broker or you're in the banking sector and you want to make a change where you're dealing directly with clients and helping them transform their lives through investing in sensible investment properties, we would love to hear from you. The job is going to close out shortly. So if you're interested, please refer to the show notes, send us a link of your information and we'll get in contact with you. Right, let's move on.
There you go. Today we are going to dissect the annual investor sentiment survey done by Pippa, Ben, the
Correct.
2018 sentiment survey.
So they've kindly allowed us this data to work through, like we have done in previous years. I still sit on the board, but Peter and the board have given us full access to all the raw data. So we wanted to spend a moment sort of going through these numbers and as we do, just make some commentary or pass some insights in regards to this. So this is an important piece of information and research for the investor community, and it just sort of gives you an idea in regards to how, and I think it's probably more sophisticated investors are looking at the market right now.
Yeah, I agree. So question number one is how many properties are in your investment portfolio, Ben? Interestingly, about 75% have 4 or less, which is interesting. But the biggest category for the respondents was 2 to 4 investment properties. So it just goes to show that we're not talking about people who have got 10, 20, 30 properties. It's someone who's just trying to accumulate a few, self-fund their retirement. But there's a question later on that talks about positive and negative cash flow. But that's interesting, isn't it?
It's a good start just to say, but it also it's skewed a lot more for multiple property owners, and that's what we're saying. It's probably a little bit more sophisticated investors that are filled in this survey that we get each year, rather than your first time beginners.
Second question: have you purchased an investment property in the last 12 months? Just a bit over half said no. And 43% said yes, Ben.
Yeah, so again, active investors. So if you're talking about confidence mindset, you're going to be, these numbers, and the theme that's going to run through the survey is going to give you some understanding of, again, what sophisticated investors are thinking in the market.
Well, question 3 helps confirm that, Ben, because the question was this the first if so, was this the first property you ever purchased? The answer was no.
Yeah.
The first investment property you ever purchased.
Correct. So 80% said no, and only 20% said yes. So that's 20% new entrants, but those people who are on their journey to build out a safe, passive income for life is pretty much what we're seeing here. Now, we're probably I don't think we mentioned it earlier, 820 respondents.
Mm-hmm.
So from around the country, and how we collect that information is we go out to our databases. All of the businesses inside Pippa go out to their databases and ask for some feedback. So you've got to also remember that it's probably not full of spruikers, and the spruiker databases, because they wouldn't be a member of Pippa because of the code of conduct that they would have to comply to.
Question 4, if this was the first investment property you ever purchased, what did you buy? Overwhelmingly, Ben.
Overwhelmingly.
83.4%.
Success leaves clues, Bryce.
Yeah, well, if you talk about the fact that it's not their first investment property, it's a sophisticated investor, 83% said they bought an established property, Ben.
Yeah, an established property as opposed to brand new, off the plan or vacant land. So still 15% of people bought brand new or off the plan. Okay, so that shows you something. And then the vacant land is also in there at just over 2%.
So question 5, also, if this was your first investment property purchase, do you own the property you live in or do you rent it? Again, this is a little higher for the renters than what I thought. So
well,
a few rent
in
investors
abroad,
going around.
Correct. So we do have a lot of rent investors who have filled in the survey, 110 of them. So that's pretty interesting. And obviously the owners have also come in here as well and said, well, 65% owning, but the rent investors are certainly showing up in those numbers there.
So there you go, 65% of them said they do own. Question number 6, do you believe now is a good time to invest in residential property? Ben, surely not after all the media alarmists. Everyone will be saying no, surely. Well,
about 2/3, well over 2/3 said...
Three-quarters,
Three-quarters, yeah. Over 3/4 said yes. They're still interested in investing in property. Wow. And is it a good time to buy? So... these are obviously people who have got good confidence, have been through the process a couple of times, and don't get caught up in the short-term noise in the marketplace.
Question 7, are you looking to purchase an investment property in the next 6 to 12 months? Yes was 52%, Ben. No was 31%. And the balance of just over 15, unsure. So that could come down to confidence around cash flow, whether they could get the lending. Those types of questions usually come up. So not a bad response in what I would have thought a difficult market for some to get the confidence up. 1 and 2 are saying, what problem? 1 and 2 and 1 and 3 are saying no.
Correct.
So, question 8. Here we go, Ben. This will see if it's their podcast listeners or whether they're... this actually doesn't apply to podcast listeners because there's a bit of everything here. But if so, what type of property would you buy? Lowest, Ben, was house and land package. Second lowest, unit or apartment. Third lowest, or perhaps second, was townhouse and villa at 10%. And then overwhelmingly again at 66%, 2/3 of the people said they'll buy a house.
Yep, they're obviously looking for land, but we're seeing here house and land packages. It was interesting, of the 820 people who were surveyed and completed their surveys, only 651 of those people actually responded to this question. So they either are unsure, but no, even the unsure, they just skipped it. So 169 people skipped the question.
Wow.
So it's like, I'm too embarrassed to say what I want to say, but that's interesting.
Yeah, well, it was anonymous too, wasn't it? So,
yeah, it's an anonymous survey.
Question 9, would you buy established, off the plan, new house and land and vacant land? It's kind of just confirming what we've already gone through.
Yeah, we circle back on that one. So and a big number. So 721 respondents to this question, 92.5% saying They would buy established or existing.
9 out of 10 people said established, which is really
nothing
good news.
new. They don't want the developers' profits.
Question 10. In terms of return on investment with property, can you rank the most important to the least important drivers? 1 being most important, 6 being least important. So long-term capital growth, Ben.
Yeah, it was a standout, an absolute clear standout that people want long-term capital growth, and then they also want long-term rental income. So they're striving for that passive return.
What's interesting, Ben, is the lowest of the charts is short-term tax benefits, which is good to know that a sophisticated investor. But that's probably a message for anyone who's looking to invest for the first time or is in the early part of their journey. The tax benefits are not what professional investors buy investment properties for. It's just a bonus.
So everything was long-term. Some of the other short-term, renovating for profit was less than 5%. Short-term growth was less than 5%. Short-term cash flow was less than 5%. So, and then the tax one you were saying before there, 1% of their initial respondents wanted those tax returns, those tax benefits. But as you move down on the scale, you can see that, they really do prioritise the order in terms of the long-term play versus the short-term play.
Which is good news, really good news. Question 11, in order of importance, why are you planning to, or why do you invest in property? 1 being most important, 9 being least important, Ben.
So another clear story here in terms of what's coming out of the data, where we see 36%, so over a third, to provide for a better life financially for myself and all my family. Mm-hmm. So really clear in terms of why they're doing that. Number 2 came in at to be self-funded in retirement. So, and then the number 3 was to retire earlier or to have the option to work less. Real clear. Long-term, safe investment. That's what they're looking for in terms of getting that story done.
So there was one there to become rich. That was on the low end, which was interesting.
Well, we want, I created this survey several years ago, is I wanted to see, the sensible element of this, because the spruikers talk about the get rich quick stuff. So, how many people are nominating to get rich? And you can see there that it was very, very low in terms of what that looked like, less than sort of 3% response there in terms of that.
Oh, good. So, and for those people listening, Ben, we can give out the survey. We'll put it.
There's a great infographic thing that we can give out, and they can basically have a look in more detail.
Okay, question 12. Where is the most appealing place to buy right now? And the options were regional, metro, or coastal, or mining towns. 4 options. Good to know that a sophisticated investor, not a single person, put a mining town. 0.
It is interesting. I mean, I was fortunate enough to catch up with Damien Collins from Momentum Wealth last week. And look, the reality is that some of the vacancies are really tight in some of those mining towns. They've come off their bottom, so areas like Karratha, Port Hedland, even sort of moving up. There's definitely movement in those areas, right? So you're sort of buying at a 30% discount to peak, so if not 40% discounts to peak, and the yields are still very, very good there. So even though everyone's off them, the reality is if this is a steady environment that we're in, and basically those mining towns aren't going to put on a lot more supply and demand is growing, you'll definitely see some returns there. But remember what we've always said about mining towns, they are speculative at best. They are not long-term. No. So if you're going to go in there with a short-term view, go in there with a high-risk profile, not a low-risk profile. There is, for the astute investor, there is some money to be made there, but for the rest of us, we'll just hit the pass button.
Just hope the mine doesn't go south, don't you say? All right. Question 13. Which state do you believe currently offers the best investment prospects, Ben? No one said Darwin.
No one said. Wow. 4 people said Darwin. So less than half of 1%. Everyone's probably saying, I bet you it's Brisbane. Correct. You're right. 44% of people said Vegas.
Melbourne wasn't too far behind.
No, so basically,
26.
quarter of all said that Melbourne was still a good market. Sydney's definitely come off the boil. We're just under 10%. Perth sitting at 7%. Hobart sitting at 3%. Canberra, which is, look, I mean, I think everyone listens to us about the land tax issue that they've got in Canberra, but Adelaide's also, Adelaide's almost as good as Sydney as a place to invest. And, our data's certainly saying that Adelaide and Brisbane are the markets at the moment.
Yeah, we've got a lot of clients who've done very well in Adelaide. Does your property investment, this is question 14, does your property investment or your combined portfolio generate positive income or negative cash flow right now, Ben?
Yeah, so why do we ask this question? It's a really good question to ask because we want to see where they are in terms of their accumulation journey and what has been their strategy. So in some cases, the accumulation is going to yield you eventually positive cash flow. So once you've finished building and you're starting to retire the debt, so we saw a result there that still 46% are in negatively geared environments, so still accumulating up. And then we had the neutral, which meant that it roughly covers itself, sitting at 24%. And then we had 21% for positive in terms of that their actual portfolio is generating them that positive cash flow.
Well, the next question is a follow-up. If it's negative, how long do you expect it will turn positively geared to generate a positive passive income for you? The majority of people said up to 5 years. So that was 60% or 3 out of every 5 said it will be within the next 5 years, Ben. But the majority of them said between 4 and 5 years.
And that's what we've always talked about when it comes to negative gearing. The reality is that negative gearing isn't an investment strategy. If you think it is, you've got rocks in your head.
It's a tax outcome.
All right, it's a tax outcome. And in all cases, over time, your negatively geared property will turn positively geared. So, you will be paying tax on that property down the track as part of your self-funding retirement if you build up enough in the portfolio.
All right, question 16, Ben. Using the below scale, which one of these statements best describes your situation? First one is, my investment portfolio of properties generates a passive income, 1. 2, I can easily afford to cover any cash flow shortfall at the moment. 3, I can comfortably cover any cash flow shortfall at the moment. 4, I can cover the current cash flow shortfall, but my cash flows are tight. And 5, I'm having trouble with covering the cash flow shortfall at the moment. Ben, which one?
Yeah, so the number one outcome here was I can comfortably cover any cash flow shortfall at the moment, which was just on 35%. 33% then says I can easily afford to cover any cash flow shortfall at the moment. And then we start to getting into the areas where it's a little bit tight. My property investment portfolio generates a passive income, so they're positively geared. So all of those there are, sort of come up to around 85%. Then you've got, I can cover the cash flow shortfall, but my cash flows are tight, which was 15%. And then I'm having trouble sitting at 1.5%. So that's where, so we are still talking about maybe 16% of people who are tight. That in terms of how it correlates to numbers, we had over 117 people saying, and 13 people saying that their cash flows are a little tight there. So that's an interesting one. I would have thought we would definitely want to see some confidence in this space, and the vast majority of people, it's on the fringes, on the downside, that we're going to see those challenges for some people.
Question 17, what is currently the biggest concern for you as a property investor? The number one concern, Ben, is further tightening of investor lending.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, you're going on a journey there, aren't you? So if you can't execute on the accumulation of additional properties for your portfolio, then that's going to slow you down. Now, number 2 came in as changes to negative gearing tax laws.
It's interesting for people to think about that because 2020 is an important year because if the government was to change negative gearing rules, they more than likely need to get it through Parliament, and then probably the 1st of July 2020 will be interesting. So if that was the case, people need to, and their cash flow allows, they need to make sure that they can get in as soon as they can, Ben.
Yeah.
Because they don't want to get into a big frenzy.
Correct.
To chase a grandfathered rule at the end, because that'll just become a mini boom and the people who get in last will pay the most.
Bryce, we've got an election before the end of the financial year next year. It could even be 2019. But the Labor Party haven't come out and said a time frame yet in terms of when it's going to be. It is going to be grandfathered, so it could be the 1st of July 2019. So if it's 1st of July 2019, if you're looking to add to your portfolio and have insurances if you want to buy existing property, which is what the smart people in this report are telling you to do, then you're going to have a bit of trouble. So, you might need to start getting your finances organised, doing your cash flows, using your Money Smart platform
Yes.
to get sorted and getting going.
So, Ben, the people on the previous question, those who can easily afford to cover shortfall and those that are passive income, and probably those I can comfortably cover my shortfall at the moment, they're the prime candidates who would be, it's the bottom two that probably, when cash flow allows, they don't pass that.
And then the third one there on that list was banks raising interest rates. So that's on their investment portfolio. So everyone doesn't like that to happen, but you're clearly, the other two were the big runs in terms of this question.
Number 4 was a big correction in property prices, Ben.
Yeah, but that was 10%, so it's almost 1 in 10. So they're not as big a problem as some would say. And again, everyone's circumstances are different, so they're going to rank these in a different order. But it's clear to us that the number one reason that they're having trouble is the tightening of lending.
And the changes to negative gearing tax exemption laws, Ben, was pretty low. So that either suggests that people, it's not on their radar, or they're just long-term holders, and it's only an issue if they're going to sell. And if they're not going to sell, it's not an issue.
Correct. That's true.
So, okay, question 18, Ben. Federal, Labor and Green political parties have policy recommendations they are taking to the federal election in 2019 that include restricting negative gearing and capital gains tax exemptions, which will have an impact on the property market as a whole. Will this cause you to reconsider your property investment plans, your future property investment plans?
So there's a lot going on here. I mean, effectively, when we put the yeses and the unsures together, we're almost at 70%. Mm-hmm. So a third of people are starting to sort of say that's problematic. And the reason why we asked this question was... Two-thirds, my bad. Two-thirds is because we know that this policy is going to change behaviour. And that is problematic for every property owner in the country. So, and this is just being validated by that. Now, you're sort of saying a third are saying no, it won't change their strategy, and that could be about confidence that they are going to be long-term players, and a lot of them might be buying good quality properties closer to the city as well. So that you couldn't take that and say, well, a third of people aren't going to change you're basically changing 70% of the marketplace. That's going to be problematic. And it's going to be problematic.
And it's the rich getting richer too, because they're the ones who can afford to hold properties without negative gearing concessions.
Correct. In the better locations where the land values are going to go through the roof.
And if it drops, they'll be able to swoop and pick them up. So it's actually interesting that Labor's in it for the...
It's just poor policy. It's, playing with fire stuff that we talked about before.
Question 19. Do you believe changes to negative gearing and capital gains tax will improve housing affordability because property prices could fall? No. 70%. Great. Because that's just crazy to think that it will.
Yeah, that's right. It's, everyone's basically saying that this is not going to improve housing affordability. In some areas, it is going to improve housing affordability, but they're hoping that it's not the panacea, I think, is what people are saying in this question. They're going, well, how's this going to improve it if there's no one building new supply? And they're saying, well, the Labor Party is going to say, well, this does build supply because you can still get negative gearing on new properties. Yeah, but it's a second-hand car. Now it doesn't, I don't have confidence that it's going to appreciate over the long term. So why would I buy? So, they're answering this question correctly by saying, will it improve housing affordability? No, it's not the right policy for housing affordability because we've already seen property prices are going down in some locations because supply increased, demand decreased, property prices will find their equilibrium.
Question 20. Given the negative sentiment portrayed by some political parties and media outlets about greedy property investors, does this result in you being less open about your property investment activities to others, Ben?
So we've got a bit of confidence here. So we've got some really good confidence. 65% of people are still saying, no, I'm on a journey. I will still potentially be able to find opportunity here. But there is 30% who are saying, well, this could change the way in which I activate and execute. But again, we're talking about sophisticated people mainly in this report, so we can see that there's definitely going to be some behaviour change. Just how that plays out is, no one really knows, but we can make predictions on it.
Hey, interesting that a sophisticated property investor views question 21 has concern around property price drops in Sydney and Melbourne cause you to put your investment plans on hold. Overwhelmingly no is the answer. 89, almost 90%.
90%.
So, and that's because a sophisticated investor knows about borderless investing, of course, Ben.
Correct.
Question 22, which is the following best describes you as a property investor? The best number one, Ben, is I have a set strategy that I'm working towards for the long term, but I don't have it fully modelled or in a detailed written plan.
So they're still planning in a way to become what they plan to become, but they haven't really documented it as a robust plan. They're sort of working towards maybe a strategy or a system, buy, hold, whatever that may look like. Then we go into, I have a detailed model plan in writing to match my long-term property investment goals.
Yeah, you bet. That's just a bit over 1 in 4.
We want to, and that's been growing over the course of these, we've done these sentiment surveys for several years now. That's pleasing because people are being less rash with their decision making, less speculative in their investment plans, and we're starting to see that come through.
Third one is I have a fair idea of my investment plans for the next 5 years or so.
Yeah, getting there. And look, some people's plans is, they may be looking for, their life partner. And so, if you don't have that life partner, then there is going to be a lot of changes that happens as well. So that's fair enough. I don't think you'll ever get that to 100% where you've got a detailed plan.
And then the fourth one is I have a rough idea of what I want to achieve, but I don't have a set investment plan. That's just under 20%. And then I am totally opportunistic and don't work to an investment plan. There's only 1.6%.
Yeah. So
13 people though.
Well, yeah, 13 people are basically 8 black on the roulette wheel. Good for them.
Question 23. Which professionals have you sought services from in the past? Number 1, Ben. Number 1 ranked person is the mortgage broker.
The mortgage broker. So 87%. They trust their accountants, 82%. So they get professional help. So this is building out your A team, people. What we've talked about before. Who is your team of specialist professionals that they are working with? And so some good numbers here. So mortgage brokers, absolutely you need a investment savvy broker. Accountant, you need someone to help you with your tax planning and also your tax returns. Conveyancers and legal people, we've got 75%. Property investment advisor sitting at 50%. Property manager sitting at 70%. Buyers agents also coming close at 50%. Financial planner at 39-40%. Property investment coach sitting at 15%. Not sure what they are.
And I haven't sought advice, Ben. 2.3% or 19 people.
Yeah.
So it's
success leaves clues. Mm-hmm. Now you've got to also remember that there may be some bias in this report because it would have been sent out through all the members and these people would have been using professionals. So, but success leaves clues. These are all people who have got multiple property portfolios, so they're doing a lot right.
Question 24. Where have you sought, where do you plan to seek property investment advice from? Okay, property investment advisor was number 1 at 65, Ben. Buyer's advocate came in second. Didn't mortgage broker came in second at 56. No, I was right.
You're
Buyer's
right.
agent came in at 58%. Then the mortgage broker 56, then the accountant at 51. So interesting.
So well, that just says that a lot of them probably, like the accountants and so forth, who they already have potential support from, they're not going to answer that question, right? But the other ones who are looking to build out their team, buyers agents are on the radar, and really pleasingly qualified property investment advisors. Which is obviously the people who Pippa represents in this list here, including all of the professional advisors who work in the property investment space. That's a good sign. So we're getting some cut through in terms of helping people get on their journey.
Where do you get your property investment knowledge education from? Where's the podcast, Ben? Ooh, look at that. Podcast. Oh, second highest.
Second highest. Yep, second highest. So obviously you've got professional sources, advisors, so 40% for that.
Which it should be, yep.
Yep, but yeah, there's no doubt that podcasts over the last 2 or 3 years have really transformed the way in which people are seeking knowledge because they can do it whilst they're running, walking, driving. So they're getting that audio knowledge, but you can still see there's exhibitions, there's family, friends, there's books. So books are still reasonably high up there, and internet searches sitting at 6%, books at 6%. Research data providers, 12%. But there's clearly professionals as number 1, podcasts as number 2, and then it sort of goes really low down into those environments.
Very good, very good. Okay, question 26. What is your property investment exit strategy, Ben? Number 1 was to hold and never sell, which is great. 2 was sell down some or all. Number 3 is unsure at this stage, and number 4 was live off the equity. Live off the equity at almost 5%. I actually thought that would be a little bit higher, but it's just a reflection of changing paradigms.
Correct.
And also a changing lending landscape, because I've got to be honest, when I first got into this back in 1998, live off equity was the only strategy. You bought 7 properties, and then the 8th year you lived off the equity on the first one, and the 9th year you lived off the equity in the second one. That was the process. But that shows that a sophisticated investor is all about cash flow, retiring out debt, and hopefully holding it for the long term.
Yeah, and the fact is more and more people are getting into property investing, so the live off the equity was never going to be sustainable if property prices continue to grow beyond the reach of everyone in all marketplaces. And that's why we always say there's a really strong flight to comfort and flight to safety in these tougher times, where we do see more quality character homes in better areas get the gold.
Because the living off equity strategy does work, doesn't it, Ben? But it's a white knuckle ride, because you've got to make sure that you're always in a rising market. You've got to make sure that the lenders will always lend you some cash, Ben. And if you don't have an income outside of rental income, will they be able to lend it to you? So it works in
theory it would have worked, but then they tightened it up, and so it's a dead strategy now. I don't know whether anyone would be sitting here still thinking that they could do that unless they've got an enormous amount.
I was about to say they've got a private banker or
they've also got so much equity, Bryce, that they could do that, right? And once they pass away, the portfolio can be liquidated.
Question 27: how did you secure your last investment loan? Through a mortgage broker, Ben. Was
Real
3
clear.
out of 4 people.
Yeah. So you're at 20. You're basically 3/4 of everyone who now buys investment properties uses a broker.
So the bank was next at just under 20%, but then the other options were a credit union, building society, or paid cash. And other was 1.27%.
So it's clear that success is in working with a professional advisor who can offer you choice.
Question 28: how do you intend to secure finance for your next investment loan? Well, rinse and repeat, Ben.
Yep, this one even higher now. So we had 75%. Now we're at 86% of people who will look to buy a property will finance through a broker, and I think that's a further sign of the times with APRA's tightening. You cannot, expect the average person who's investing in property to be able to do the analysis that a broker can do with hundreds of loan products out there to get them the borrowing capacity that they need to be able to do that. So that's an obvious sign there in terms of the banks will be under pressure because they just cannot offer that type of choice.
Very good. Question 29. Have recent changes to lenders' investor lending policies impacted your ability to secure finance for an investment property? Almost half said yes.
So it's had an impact. I mean, that it was the desired effect. There were probably too many people being too aggressive in the property market and artificially inflating demand. And we're seeing that now taper off in some markets, and they're the markets that are experiencing the biggest losses, as well as the extreme top end of the market as well. So that's going to happen. Okay, so we've got validation around this tightening. Still, people who aren't really active in the marketplace are unsure, but around 18-19% there, and for some not applicable.
Well, it's done the job it was intended to do, isn't it, Ben?
Correct.
It's reflecting from these people who are sophisticated. Question 30. Given lenders are charging higher interest rates for interest-only loans, have you / do you intend to switch to principal and interest repayments? About 50-50 on the graph, but 35% said yes, 34% said no, and 22% said unsure.
So there's an opportunity there for effectively a quarter of the marketplace there who need to probably have a look at their finances and have a look at their lending to see whether there's any changes that they can make. But it's obviously had an impact, right, in terms of charging higher interest. They're switching over to P&I. So they're paying it down. So if you don't see any benefit in having surplus cash flow, pay it down. If the cost is getting prohibitive enough now, where there's in some cases merit to go principal and interest over interest only. The vast majority of my portfolio is still sitting at interest only because I'm still looking for opportunities in the market.
Yep. Question 31. If you have any interest-only loans, will you struggle to meet the new principal and interest repayments once the current interest-only period expires? Reassuringly, Ben, 61% said no. 12% said yes, and the remaining 26%, or a quarter of them, Ben, were either unsure or not applicable.
Yeah, so the non-applicables make up that 13%, and the other unsure at 13%. So the vast majority there, that you probably put those two numbers together, and you're up around that sort of 75. So 3/4 again. No problems. It's 20%, 25% of the market who's going to have to, watch their numbers.
Question 31. If you said yes to question 32, sorry. If you said yes to question 31, will you have to sell in the next 12 months, or have you sold one or more properties in the past 12 months to be able to meet your lending commitments?
So the reason why we introduced this question, Bryce, it's a really good question. If everything rolls over to P&I and you can't en masse and you can't afford to do something, guess what? Only 6% of people says I'm in that situation.
But there was a heap of them, Ben, that said not applicable.
So in other words, their portfolio is managing. It's not going to be relevant to them. So
Why would they say no?
Well, true. I mean, if it rolls over, it rolls over. But they're not. Yeah, they probably didn't read the question well enough.
Yeah.
But yeah, from that point of view, no real drama here. There's not this chronic panic that we're seeing in terms of what's being reported for shows like 60 Minutes and so forth. Just is not in existence. So the ones who said yes, 29 out of 513 people who answered that question.
Yeah, and the assumption on 60 Minutes was everyone's going to come out of interest only together on the same month of the same year. Yeah.
So that's where the data is being incorrectly interpreted.
Question 33. Given the current interest rate you are paying, at what interest rate differential would you consider refinancing your loans?
So we're now starting to get into the dynamics of where people see value, and where they see real value. The tipping point appears to be around that sort of 0.5 of 1%. Mm-hmm. So if you're 50 basis points out of the market, that could, on $1 million of lending, that's $5,000 a year. So that's starting to get to a point on $100,000, it's $500, so it's not as critical for some. Anything above that, and then everyone's rushing to the door. So, the bankers should be looking at that and saying, all right, we can't really be out of the market, because there'll be a refinancing field day for those who can afford to refinance, looking for better options out there. But very little, 1% change. So people get it. 0.1 of 1% change. No, 2 people said they might move, very, very cash conscious. 0.25, 69 people of the 787 who responded to this question, and then it starts to move right on up. So there you go, bankers. If you want to make sure that you can keep and retain your customer and look after them as a loyal customer, which obviously you profit on, then don't go too hard and get too greedy, because you'll be refinanced away from, because there will be better deals out there, and the best business to do that is a broker.
Question 34. Given lenders' further tightening of serviceability borrowing power over recent years, and in light of evidence presented at the Banking Royal Commission, do you currently find yourself in a position where you are unable to refinance an amount which you were able to borrow previously? No said 35. Well, so 1 in 3 said no, Ben. Mm-hmm. 1 in 4 said yes, 25%, and then unsure and not applicable made up the remaining third.
So this highlights it, right, in terms of there's still effectively 3 in 4 that are able to refinance to a better deal, but 1 in 4 now is in trouble. Mm-hmm. Right, in terms of, so they're probably still stuck with rolling over to P&I. They can still afford it, but their borrowing power has been severely dampened by these macro-prudential interference in the marketplace.
Question 35. Do you think it's fair that property investors have to pay a higher interest rate compared to owner-occupiers when the banks admit that investment lending is less risky than owner-occupied lending? I was actually surprised by this.
This is fascinating. Yeah. It's like, how fair are property investors?
I know.
I mean...
65% said, no, that's fine.
No, that's fine. Charge us a little bit more.
Yeah.
We're happy to take it for the team.
Yeah.
It's hilarious, right? Like, I sort of sit back and saying, oh, well...
No, I thought that would be overwhelmingly
correct.
Sort of yes.
And so, we're obviously in the series of questions around finance at the moment. But, yeah, it should be, I would have thought, I think it is unfair. Like, we're less of a risk to the bank on the data terms, in terms of who's been, unable to repay. So the delinquency rates are far worse on owner-occupied mortgages than what they are on investment mortgages. But no, we're happy to. So we're very generous, government, in terms of. So don't go on and hit us with negative gearing and go, because we're happy to pay a little bit more profit to the banks.
Kind of confirms the early question about not being greedy.
Yes, we're definitely not greedy when we respond like that.
Question 36. Given lenders are raising interest rates out of cycle with the RBA's cash rate, are you considering fixing your interest rates for some or all of your loans? Yeah.
So 44% said yep, they would look at locking in, and 35% said no. So and then there was still some unsure, like 16% said unsure, so they need to go and talk to their broker, and then 3 other percent said, well, what debt?
Yeah.
What debt? 32% said, I've got no big debt.
I don't think it's unfair on the previous question, Ben, but they're putting in a little bit of a few measures to make sure it doesn't get out of control. Question 37. Have you invested in property via a self-managed super fund? 86% said no.
No. Only 13% said... This is interesting. All the banks, all the big four banks have now pulled out of SMS lending. And AMP also announced last week no more SMS lending. So no more Smurfs lending. So from that point of view, it's... it's interesting, right? Like everyone was worried about, because again, Labor will close down being able to borrow money inside a self-managed super fund. That's all very political for them because they're funded by the unions, which own the industry funds. So, you get that. But the reality is here's another example of people who are sophisticated, who want to be able to do something by themselves, now having less and less opportunity to do that. So it's nanny state's a strong statement, but it just highlights to me that it's either too complex and no one wants to go there, or politically it's a football that everyone wants to wash under the carpet.
Well, the follow-up question is, the first one was, have you? The second one, are you planning to? And the results almost mirror, Ben.
Yeah.
Which you'd expect.
For some of us who do have self-managed super funds and we're buying properties in them, I would have answered yes to that, because it's an excellent vehicle to buy property from in my circumstances. I'm not saying that's a recommendation for everyone. We give no personal recommendations out on this podcast, but that just goes to show. So I'm going to have to shop around to some of these second-tier lenders to get future lending until someone bans that.
Here's a layup question, Ben. In general, do you think property investors need more investment education about the risks and potential benefits of investing in property?
Absolutely, and that's why PIPA and also PICA are associations that we're trying to build up, because yes, there are lots of risks in investing in property, and so you absolutely need to get better educated at it, and they are two great places to start.
For the record, 87% said yes. Question 40. Do you think any person providing information or advice on investing in property should, at the very least, have some level of formal property investment education or training, Ben?
The results are in, Bryce. 95% of people want their property investment advisors to be qualified.
95%?
And please don't think that your mortgage broker is qualified to give you property investment advice, or your property investment advisor is qualified to give you lending advice. Ooh. That's the whole point here. Because I do get annoyed with that in terms of these people are disciplined and specialised in what they know. Everyone has an opinion on property, so I do see people moonlighting, a lot of mortgage brokers moonlighting as property experts with no formal qualifications. If they were serious about the work that they wanted to do for their client, they'd go off and get qualified to give that advice.
Yeah, question 41. Do you believe the property investment industry should be regulated and licensed the same way financial planners, mortgage brokers and real estate agents are? 9 out of 10.
9 out of 10, Bryce. Very clear. We're almost on the home stretch here, Kai.
Said yes for the record. Said yes. Question 42. What would you consider rent vesting as a property investment strategy?
Wow. There you go. So you can see the ages of our people who've filled in the survey. So 63% said, yeah, they would.
Absolutely.
So there you go. There's a changing world. I mean, you go to London, New York, Tokyo, all these big places, you more often than not renting whilst you're earning your money in those big cities.
Question 43, which resources do you think do you use when searching for a property? And you can tick more than one. So online listing portals was number one, Ben. And
yep.
No surprise there. You can't see the properties.
Good old realestate.com.au.
Yep, good friends of ours. Buyer's agent was 56%. Property investment advisors was 45%, Ben. Sales agent new listing emails was 36, mortgage broker was 22, and accountant was 12.
Interesting.
Question 44, as we're coming home quickly, are you aware there is a peak non-for-profit professional association for those working in the property investment industry called PIPA?
87% of people said yes. Now that could have some bias
There's
because
a little skew on
a
that
lot of the data went out to them first.
Question
We did
40
mention it on the podcast though to fill the survey in.
Question 45, did PIPA membership influence your decision to select a certain professional to work with?
Interesting. So at this stage, 31% of people said yes, it did. 60% or 58%, rounding up, said no. But that will change over time. We've got more work to do there by the looks of things.
All right, now this won't come as a surprise to anyone. What is your home state or territory for the investors? New South Wales was number 1 at 42. Victoria was number 2 at 30. Queensland was number 3 at 11. South Australia was number 4 at 5.37. And normally Perth comes in fourth,
so
that came in fifth.
That's about reach in terms of where the
survey goes
will go to.
What's your age, Ben?
So the profiling, just so you know, we're just sort of rounding out the profiles here. So the vast majority of people were 36 to 45, representing 33% of the sample. Then 25 to 35, representing 31% of the sample. Then 46 to 55, rounding out the big three. So that's pretty common at 23%. And then you had some others, very low. So that's probably reflective also of the rent vesting flavour that came through the survey.
And how much do they earn, Ben?
Yeah, so this is also something, again,
Question
it's an anonymous
48.
survey. Second last question, I understand. So we can see here that the vast majority of people are on household income of 150 to 200. That was 26% of the sample. And then the second biggest was 22% of the sample of
so
100.
half of them, Ben, were between 1 and 200.
1 and 200, half of them. And then you've got the outliers. You sort of got 75 to 100. And then you've also got 200 to 300.
Interestingly, under 50% was under 50,000, Ben, was the lowest. So clearly, people at that end of the
you
spectrum.
Can't get into the market doing that. Oh, that was the last one. Sorry, my bad. I thought it was 49.
I was just going to let you find out the old-fashioned way, mate. Just let life be the teacher. But there you go, folks. That's the annual investor sentiment survey from people. We thank them for letting us give that a little wrap, Ben. For me, my life hack.
Yes.
As you know, I've got to travel a bit, so I'm away from the family. So again, iPhone is what works for me. I use it as my alarm in the morning, Ben. So normally I turn it into flight mode because I don't want the thing happening in my head at most nights when I'm at home. Got it. But what I do is I put it on Do Not Disturb whilst I'm away so that Andrea can call me in an emergency because you can have a setting, Ben. If it's got Do Not Disturb, you don't get all the whistles and the bells that'll wake up in the middle of the night. But if Andrea or anyone on my favourites, Ben... And you're actually on my favourites. I don't think of calling me at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Just checking to see, mate, whether you had
did you get it done? If someone's on your favourites, you can have that excluded. So Andrew's on the favourites. In the event of an emergency, she can call me. So there you go, my little life hack on how to use your phone as your alarm without getting any disturbing reminders, calendar things that wake you up in the middle of the night, but also your loved ones can call you in an emergency. Did you know?
Well, Bryce, we're talking footy again. This one's a tough one. But I was saying to you before we started the show that I've never seen Collingwood win a grand final in September because they actually haven't won a grand final. So I've seen them...
Yeah, and I'm thinking...
that's not right.
1990,
they broke through.
But then when I thought it through, you're right.
Yeah, because 58 was our last one before that, right?
Yeah.
But both of those premierships have been won in October. Never in September. And I mentioned that on the last week's podcast about it's just the last Saturday in September that we have a problem with. We've been to 45 big dances and we've taken the chocolates on 15 occasions.
If we had a draw on Saturday, they play extra time now, don't they?
Yeah, that's it. So it can never happen again. So we may not win another premiership, right?
that's where I was going with that. So did you know, Ben?
What's that one?
That... that West Coast is now the equal most successful club in the AFL era.
Oh, yes.
Because you know how you guys, because I'm married into a Carlton family. Oh, we got these premierships and Essendon. We got all these premierships. I'm thinking, all right, that's before we're in the
all these premierships.
Well, the thing is, the AFL era started in 1990. Now, one for Collingwood, you won the first one.
Yes, we did.
But West Coast now won 4.
Yep.
And Hawthorn's won 4.
Yep.
And then there's a bunch of 3s. Brisbane's got 3.
Yep.
But West Coast is now the most successful.
They're a good outfit. They bring a good team.
But in the AFL era, Geelong have lost 4 grand finals, and Collingwood have lost 3.
Ah, well, so I don't feel so bad. Geelong are worse than us.
So I thought I'd let you off the hook there. So there you go. Just snuck into your little Did You Know segment.
Very good. Thank you for that.
Very good, mate. Well, it's on again next year.
Yep.
All the best.
Thank you. Books out.
Books out.
Make money simple again.
Yeah.
Check it out.
Check it out, folks.
20% discount on that. And just remember, Ross, with all this knowledge that we give you, if you don't act on it, you're not going to get empowered, are you?
So there you go, folks. Words of wisdom from Ben, and we will see you next week.